Welcome, everybody, to our first edition on Southern Patriot Network. And I have with me today Mr. Paul Engel. He is a constitutional authority and expert, I would call him. He has a website called constitutionstudy.com. He's written several books. Paul, great to have you with us, and I appreciate you being a contributor to our network.
Well, thank you. I'm impressed. I'm the first one. Wow.
Very
Uh,
first.
it,
Well,
it's a pleasure. It's an honor, and yeah, I'm glad to be here.
I think it's appropriate that we start with talking about the Constitution on our very first program here. Without the Constitution, we have no basis, we have no foundation as a country. And what I want to dive into today is, Paul, is the recent misquoting of Donald Trump, our former president, when he came out and made the statement he made about the Constitution with the election issue of
Right.
2020. And a lot of people took that out of context, I think, and interpreted it into something and a talking point that it necessarily wasn't what he meant. And I know you've looked at the comment. Give me your take on that, and I know you have it. Why don't you read it for us, and we'll dive
Sure.
into it.
Sure. And of course, we're dealing with Donald Trump, who is best known for his bombacity.
Oh
So
yeah,
what he posted on his own platform, Truth Social, was so. With the revelation of massive and widespread fraud and deception in working closely with big tech companies, the DNC and the Democratic Party, do you throw the presidential elections of 2020 out and declare the rightful winner, or do you have a new election? A massive fraud of this type and magnitude allows for the termination of all rules, regulations, and articles, even those found in the Constitution. Our great founders did not want and would not condone false and fraudulent elections. That's what he
okay.
said. Right.
I agree with that last statement. I agree with that last
Well,
statement.
yeah. And, a lot of people I've heard say, oh, he's calling for the getting disposing of the Constitution, getting rid of it. And I'm like, no, but he is pointing out a serious problem. As the attorneys general of Missouri and Louisiana are deposing members of the FBI and finding out how closely the FBI was working with big tech, with the major social media platforms. The latest one from Twitter, part of the deposition, was the FBI went so far as to say, listen, you can expect a hack and leak operation involving Hunter Biden. So they didn't say, listen, spike the Hunter Biden story, but they did everything short of that. They said, listen, you can expect something about Hunter Biden, assume it is hacked, assume it is a leak, and we expect you to treat it appropriately. This, by the way, goes through a long series of, by the way, both political parties sending links and accounts to social media for review.
Right. And now we see the results of that as Elon Musk has made public a lot of this information.
Yes, he
And we're
has.
going to continue to have drops on that. So I think it's obvious that our mainstream media did withhold this information and didn't cover it. And of course, Twitter didn't allow it, and Facebook didn't allow it. It was considered as misinformation if you snuck it through, and then they banned it most of the time. So that obviously had some impact on the election. And Donald Trump goes on and says basically it stole the election, and because they had labeled, well, there was just a whole lot of attacks at that point. So constitutionally, where do we stand when something like this has an election? Is there any protection or safeguard within the Constitution that could that we could refer to halt this type of stuff?
Well, first I want to mention I did read the tweet stream, the tweet thread. I have not seen the actual Twitter files themselves. I looked through the tweet thread, and as frequently as the case, it's neither as good or as bad as a lot of people have claimed. From a constitutional standpoint, we have to understand a couple of things. First and foremost, The American people do not vote for president. There are
Right.
actually two separate elections that happen. We, the people, our states allow us, right? They aren't required to. Our states allow us to vote for the electors that we would prefer. Do we want the Democrats, the Republicans? Who knows? Maybe someday a third party. That is the election where we're seeing so much fraud. It's the election where we saw meddling, unconstitutional meddling by courts and by state executive branches. The problem is what Trump is talking about shows a very uncommon misunderstanding of how we elect a president. When a state, when the state legislature appoints electors, no matter how fraudulently the state elections go, it is up to the legislature to appoint electors. The fact that they're appointing them based on a fraudulent election doesn't change that fact. The states appointed electors. Those electors then voted for the candidates for president as to which they wanted. The only criminal activity, the only activity that was, I would say, I don't want to say simple, not the only unconstitutional, the only one that really should impact the actual presidency is the fact that at least 5 of the 50 states illegally appointed electors. The legislatures appointed electors in a manner other than determined by the legislature of the state. Therefore, those electors from those 5 states were never legally appointed. Now, you know me, I did the math.
Okay.
If I take those 5 states out of the mix,
Right.
if we recognize if Congress had been a fairly counting these numbers and said, wait a second, these were not legally appointed,
Right.
we would still have a President Biden. It'd be by one electoral vote, but we still would have had a President Biden.
So if you flipped all the states that were in question to Trump, that's what you're saying.
No. What I'm saying is
Okay.
the ones where they're illegally appointed, those electors do not count.
Okay.
They disappear, right?
Okay.
It's like, it's like showing up to a baseball game with a fraudulent ticket. They don't get, you don't get to send your neighbor in. It's like, no, you're not allowed in because you weren't legally appointed. But so there's not we have to redo.
Right. Okay.
No,
But let's suppose I get what you're talking about. You disqualify those and pull them out. Let's just say, for instance, Pennsylvania had gone toward Trump. Okay. I think what he's insinuating is, had it been a fair election in these states, he would have won these, and they would have gone to his side. In that case, that would make him president if you add it up, correct?
But the problem is you cannot prove a counterfactual.
Right.
You cannot prove what would have happened if we did something different.
Right.
Now, interestingly enough, we have to deal with the fact that many states screwed this up, and we are suffering the consequences of that. And rather than trying to come up with a way to sort of insinuate or come up with a legal remedy that doesn't constitutionally exist, how about we take that focus and look at just how badly our states are screwing up elections?
Right.
Arizona took weeks to come out with the results of their election. They had at least one state where the state election board had to certify the election under duress. They were threatened with a criminal charges if they didn't certify their election. How about we deal with that? How about we deal with Pennsylvania saying, we can't get these elections done? The answer is not to go back and relitigate an election that ultimately wouldn't make a difference.
Right.
So even if they did go back and say, we're going to vote for new electors, there's no constitutional mechanism to say, now we're going to redo the election.
Okay. So what you're saying then, we need to go state by state and take a look at it. And it's up to the people that live in that state to do that, isn't it? I mean, we don't have a federal mandate of any sort or a federal authority to go into the states and examine their election Do we or do we not?
No, you're correct. We do not.
Okay.
The only action the federal government can take is the Congress can, by law, modify the times, places, and manner of choosing U.S. senators and U.S. representatives. That's it.
Nothing with
Nothing to do
president.
with
Okay.
nothing to do with the president.
Right. Okay.
But I would take it a step farther, because yes, we need to work on our states. We really need to be working at the county level, because you look at how many counties had problems. Why are we settling for that?
I know.
Why are the people not more engaged with their county election boards, making sure, hey, this stuff, these processes make sense. They're free, fair, and transparent. Why in Arizona do they wait to count the early ballots until after they've counted the in-person on-day ballots?
And they were setting it up a week or 2 weeks in advance, talking about issues with voting machines that were going to take place.
Yep.
I know that came out in Arizona and maybe even in Georgia. There were issues in certain counties that they already knew they were having. Okay, yeah. We're fortunate that we live in the state of Tennessee, and when we go to bed at night of the election, we know who won in Tennessee. It's amazing to me that we're in 2022, and now we have slower election results than we did in 1965. It's mind-boggling to me.
Well, part of it is, and again, you're right. I like Tennessee. I love the fact that I show up. I show a photo ID, so that I'm sure that my ballot is being cast by me, not by somebody else. Even to the point of not my wife. My wife needs assistance in actual voting, so she has to actually sign a piece of paper that says it's okay for me to go in and help her, because she's in a wheelchair. It's kind of hard to see. But even in Tennessee, we have all electronic voting machines. There is no audit trail. There's no way for me to know for sure that the ballot I cast was actually the ballot that got counted. Now, I'm reasonably sure.
Right.
But I'm not sure beyond a reasonable doubt. I'm like, I would still love to see, there are improvements that could be made.
Right.
But you're right. Now, part of it is this emphasis on the number of people who vote versus, and the speed with which we count them versus the accuracy of making sure that the people who vote are eligible, and the accuracy of the count. We everyone's worried about getting it out that day. Now, getting it out that day is a good thing. We should be able to do it, but we've become so obsessed with, you show up to vote, you've never registered, you've got no photo ID. Guess what they do? They give you a ballot, and then they take that ballot and you fill it out, and that's got to be processed somehow. That makes it, to me, that is part of the reason why we can't get these answers is, I don't want to say it's made it so easy to vote. We've swung so far to the other side. It's like everybody gets to vote, and then we'll weed out the bad stuff later.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Everybody votes. And the problem with that end is it's now you have to actively search to find the malfeasance. You have to actually search to find that it voted illegally or that voted multiple times. And the one question most American citizens don't ask is, where is the burden of proof that the election was right?
Right.
We all assume that the election was right unless we find a problem. How about we say, no, we don't assume it's right. The government has to prove that they got it right.
And the way to do that, I hear you saying, goes to the state and county and maybe even down to the precinct level. I guess you could audit, except you're telling me in the state of Tennessee that can't be audited in any way. But that's how to do it, is take it down to the lowest level and check everything from the ground up.
They cannot do a forensic audit, which is, again, something that could be fixed. It should be very simple to have a machine that says, once you finished your voting, it prints out a ticket with a QR code. and this is who you voted for, and it's anonymous, right? And I can go to a website and punch in the code and say, yes, my vote was recorded. Here's when it was recorded. Here's when it was recorded. Here's who I voted for. Right? There are ways we can do this. But the reason I focus at the county level is those precincts are governed by the county election board.
Right. Yeah.
And if we are, it's like anything else, right? If we look at it from a grassroots, we make our county election boards better. We put people in place that can ask the right questions. I was working with a group in another state that's challenging their electronic voting machines, and they actually filed a lawsuit against their commissioner of elections. And what was interesting is he sent back a response that said, "Oh no, none of our voting equipment has any communication devices on it." Well, of course, I spent 30 years in IT. My first question is, how do you know that? As far as I know, all of this gear is based on off-the-shelf computer products, motherboards like you have in your PC. And they all come with communication board ports in them, don't they? Have they been disabled? But it got better because we looked at the actual rules and regulations that this Secretary of Elections actually put in place, and it requires, before they count absentee ballots, there must be a computer with internet access. Doesn't that require communications?
Yes, it does.
Right. But if we have county election boards with people that have this expertise that can start bringing those questions forward, that's where we're going to drive change. I believe we're going to drive change at the state.
All right. Technology has complicated our voting process, it seems, with all of the wired and the wireless technology that we have. It sounds like to me that these can be hacked, possibly, not as secure as we think. So it's interesting to think about going down to that county level and checking each one out. And that gets down to the people. That it gets down to us. It's up to us to force this issue. If we just sit back, it's going to continue.
And from my standpoint, it's not the technology, it's the processes. It's like when we first started seeing VCRs come out, how many people could not figure out how to get a VCR to work? When did your TV have to be on channel 3? I know I'm dating myself, right?
Yeah.
But it wasn't the problem with the technology, it wasn't, the processes weren't explained so that people could understand it. The technology isn't itself bad. There's a lot of good things in the technology. Wouldn't it be great to have that count done as it's happening? But we don't have are the processes to make sure that it's being done properly. And obviously, like I said, was it Arizona? They didn't get the printers working right. There's a process to make sure to check that beforehand. And I've been in situations where I had to develop processes. It's tedious, it's boring, and you always have to be thinking about what you never thought about. Right. What did I forget? What did I miss?
Okay,
and we need to use those.
Let's talk about then how does just the average citizen take a step forward and start asking questions. I guess they would go to their local elected officials, whether it be in a city or a county, and start quizzing and start pushing toward some checks and balances and some investigating into the process that we use at this local level. So I could go to my county commissioner and say, look, this is a concern. And if enough people do it, enough people make the voice and get loud about it, maybe we can see some change across this country if everybody does it. But I think it's going to take, I agree with you from the ground up. And that seems to be the way everything should be attacked, is from the ground up these days. And Paul, let's change gears just for a second. We're going to come back and talk about this some more, but I want you to tell us about your website, about your books, and also about any events that you have coming up that can give some, I'd say, vital education on the Constitution for the average guy. Talk to us about what you're doing right now.
Absolutely. Well, the first place to start is constitutionstudy.com. That's my main website. You can find all of that there. I post an article and a video there every week. It also comes out on YouTube, Rumble, Gab TV, There's links that show up on well, pretty much every social media I can think of, except Facebook. Facebook booted me off, and I'm done with them.
Well, you're with good company there.
I'm with good company.
Yeah.
But in addition, so once a week I have this article, and that's usually some, long form constitutional issue.
Right.
Every day at 3 p.m. Central Time, I'm also on America Out Loud Talk Radio for an hour. And this is more news, right? What's
Right.
news, and then commentary on it. So you can get me in two different ways. And of course, both of them are available on your favorite podcast app as well.
Well, I would like to also interject here on southernpatriotnetwork.com. We're going to have links to all of this so that you can visit. So if you go to our website, you can also link to Paul's, and Paul is a contributor here. So we're going to be talking on a regular basis, hopefully weekly, and we can rehash some of this. My goodness, we have so much to talk about when it comes to the Constitution and what's going on with our country right now. And
Absolutely.
we're definitely going to dive into it. And this is not about just you and I having a conversation, but about trying to empower the people to take a stand for their Constitution and for their country and push back on some of the nonsense. So, guys, if you like what you've seen today and you want to subscribe, hit the subscribe button, and be sure to go to our website at southernpatriotnetwork.com. And we're going to have links to a lot of other news sources, and a lot of other contributors will be coming along very soon. And Paul, again, I thank you for sitting down with us and talking about this. And we're going to get in here together one day and sit down at this table again. And until then, we'll be in touch, and we'll get all this out on the web. Anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, just one more thing. From now through New Year's, right? There's 20% off all of my books on the website, constitutionstudy.com. So you can go the digital, the print, you can get those for 20% off. And you can also get half off my next Constitution study. So we do an online study. We gather on Zoom, we read, we discuss, we study. You can get that half off through New Year's Day.
Okay, Paul, we're going to put this on Southern Patriot Network, the links and all this information that you just shared. So any of our viewers that like to, you can visit there if you forget the links, and I'll put them up on the video as well. Again, Paul, thanks for joining us, and thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that subscribe button or hit the like button on Facebook if you're watching by Facebook, and watch again real soon. We'll have another edition coming up with Mr. Paul Engel and the Constitution Study. But until then, this is David Thomas with the Southern Patriot Network. Thanks for watching.